The hearing room hummed like a machine wound too tight. Cameras blinking red, journalists whispering, the weight of spectacle thick in the air. Kash Patel leaned back in his chair, a small smirk tugging at his lips, the kind that said he'd already written the ending before the story began. His voice, when it came, sliced through the noise, confident, rehearsed, a performance meant for headlines rather than truth. He fired his opening line like a bullet. "Congresswoman, do you even understand the implications of what you're defending?" Murmurs rose, phones tilted, reporters readied their pens. Patel knew the choreography, the condescension wrapped in a smile, the question that wasn't a question at all. It was an invitation to lose control. Then, Jasmine Crockett lifted her gaze, not rushed, not reactive, just calm. The kind of calm that unnerves the loudest man in the room. Her hands folded gently before her. Her expression was unreadable, almost serene. The camera caught Patel's smirk falter for half a second, enough for the audience watching at home to feel it. That moment of quiet between his challenge and her response stretched like a held breath. It was the pause that changed everything. She didn't flinch, didn't scramble for approval. She just looked at him, steady, unblinking, as if to remind the world that silence can be sharper than sound. The energy shifted. The hum of the room faded to nothing. Even the microphones seemed to wait. And in that sliver of stillness, the audience, both in the chamber and across the nation, felt something rare. Composure winning over chaos. When she finally opened her mouth to speak, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Her voice was deliberate, balanced, carrying a weight that made every other sound in the room feel hollow. One by one, the smirks disappeared. The talking points lost their rhythm. Because in politics, as in life, there's nothing more disarming than a person who refuses to play the game. And as her words began to unfold, everyone, even her critics, leaned closer to hear what calm sounded like under fire. No one expected her next 3 words to shift the entire hearing and the entire internet in seconds. Hours earlier, the Capitol stood beneath a heavy sky. Clouds rolled low over Washington, a gray curtain pulled tight across the morning. Rain tapped the windows like an impatient metronome, counting down to confrontation. Inside the committee chamber, staffers hustled papers, adjusted microphones, and whispered final notes. To them, it was just another hearing, another day of scripted outrage and sound bites. But not today. Kash Patel arrived first. Crisp suit, polished confidence. He knew the cameras would find him, they always did. He shook hands like a man taking victory laps before the race had even begun. His aides trailed close, clutching folders packed with talking points sharp enough to draw blood. Patel thrived on noise, the clash, the spectacle, the chaos that made him look like the loudest man in a room built for performance. He adjusted his tie, checked his reflection in a silver coffee urn, and smiled. "Let's make this quick," he murmured, half to himself. The storm outside rumbled. Then Jasmine Crockett entered. No entourage, no fanfare, just a quiet presence that seemed to settle the static in the air. Her steps were measured, her expression calm, her eyes scanning the room not with suspicion, but with focus, the kind born of preparation. While Patel rehearsed confrontation, she rehearsed control. She placed her papers neatly in front of her, sipped from a plain mug, and waited. The contrast was cinematic, thunder growling outside while she sat unmoved, as if the weather itself bowed to her stillness. The narrator's voice deepens, reflective. In every era, there's always one person who shows that power isn't volume, it's restraint. Inside that chamber, 2 energies were about to collide, the noise of certainty and the quiet of truth. Patel had studied the talking points. Crockett had studied the moment. And somewhere between their preparations, the nation's next viral reckoning was already writing itself. As the gavel struck wood, the storm answered with a low roll of thunder. Cameras came alive, red lights blinked, the hum of conversation faded into the formal murmur of political theater. Patel leaned forward, that familiar grin in place. He saw the room as a stage, and himself as the star. He'd done this dance before: interrupt, dominate, drown out. The trick was simple: throw your opponent off balance, make them react, make them loud. But not today. But when Patel went off script, what followed wasn't just politics, it was poetry under pressure. Kash Patel had built a career on command. Command of rooms, command of narratives, command of chaos. He was the man who could outtalk anchors, outspin critics, and outshout anyone who dared challenge him on live television. That reputation had followed him into this hearing, polished and heavy like armor. He'd worn it for years, through administrations, interviews, and scandals. It gleamed when the cameras turned on. To his fans, Patel was a warrior, sharp, unflinching, always in motion. To his critics, he was a storm that never learned when to stop raining. But in his mind, today would be no different. Another performance, another victory, clipped into tomorrow's headlines. He leaned back in his chair as the opening statements dragged on, tapping his pen in rhythm with his own impatience. The room, the cameras, even the rain outside, they all felt like background music to his show. He'd been briefed on Jasmine Crockett, sure, young, articulate, fiery when needed. He'd seen clips, but in Patel's playbook, everyone eventually cracked under pressure. Everyone except him. When his turn came, he straightened his jacket, smiled for the cameras, and launched into his monologue. The words rolled off his tongue with the ease of someone who'd said them 100 times before, polished accusations crafted for social media. Every sentence came with a smirk, every question with an undertone. I'm in charge here. Crockett listened without interruption, which only fueled his rhythm. The more she stayed silent, the louder he became. It wasn't enough for him to make his point. He needed to dominate the frame. He began to circle her arguments before she could make them, answering his own questions with a laugh. Now, I'm sure the Congresswoman will say something about context, he quipped, leaning forward, but facts are stubborn things. The committee members shifted uncomfortably. Even those who agreed with him recognized the overreach. But Patel didn't notice. The performance had swallowed him whole. He didn't realize he was already burning his own credibility. Every overtalked sentence, every dismissive grin chipped away at the image of control he thought he was building. Like a fighter swinging too early, he mistook momentum for mastery. Crockett remained still, not frozen, but anchored. Her calm was unnerving. The cameras caught it. The audience watching at home saw it too. The power dynamic was beginning to tilt. Patel kept talking, his voice filling every second of silence she left him. He mistook that silence for surrender. It wasn't. It was set up. In his mind, the room was his. The committee members, the press, the viewers beyond the lens. They were all witnesses to his performance, and he was certain they were on his side. He laughed between points, shaking his head, gesturing like a showman. You see, this is what happens when people come unprepared. They hide behind attitude when the facts run out. The words landed with a thud. No laughter followed, no validation. Just the quiet hum of cameras recording a man talking himself into a corner. Overconfidence isn't strength. It's blindness wearing a smile. As Patel pushed harder, his voice began to edge into irritation. He mistook her composure for smugness, her patience for fear. He didn't know that Crockett's calm was the most dangerous weapon in the room. He kept throwing punches at air, filling the silence with noise, trying to make her break posture. But she never moved. Her gaze stayed level, unwavering, the stillness of someone who already knows how the story ends. And somewhere between his third interruption and his fourth self-congratulation, the shift became undeniable. The audience could feel it. His confidence had stopped looking like power and started looking like panic disguised as control. He thought he was cornering her, but he was only cornering himself. The tension thickened. The storm outside rattled the windows again, perfectly timed as if the weather itself was punctuating his unraveling. Patel glanced at Crockett, waiting for her to finally react. A sigh, a frown, anything he could grab onto to prove she was rattled. But she didn't give him even that. Her silence said everything his words couldn't. The room had turned. The cameras knew it. The audience at home knew it. Patel didn't. He smiled wider, spoke faster, thinking he was winning the room, when in truth, the room had already moved on, waiting, almost craving, for Crockett to finally speak. And when she did, it wouldn't be a defense. It would be a revelation. But what Patel didn't see was that Jasmine wasn't there to play defense. She was there to redefine the entire game. The camera lingers on Jasmine Crockett, poised and unshaken, as the tension in the hearing room tightens around her. Kash Patel's words fill the space like rapid fire, but she remains unmoved, a still figure in the eye of a storm. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must step back and trace the journey that forged this quiet fire. Jasmine Crockett's story begins far from the spotlight of Congress. She was born into a working-class family, the daughter of parents who taught her that effort outweighed entitlement. Their neighborhood in Texas was one where opportunity was scarce, but determination abundant. She learned early that the world would often underestimate her, and she would have to over-deliver to be noticed. In school, she was diligent but quiet, often overlooked by teachers and peers alike. Yet behind that quiet exterior was an intense focus, a drive to prove herself not through loud proclamations, but through results. Every test aced, every debate won, every award received was a small victory over a system that had never expected her to succeed. Every calm breath was years of self-control learned in rooms that underestimated her. This wasn't just a line, it was the accumulation of countless moments where patience, preparation, and poise mattered more than speed or volume. Law school and the courtroom became her proving grounds. While some thrived on theatrics, Crockett thrived on precision. In trials, she learned that timing could be as potent as argument, that silence could be more persuasive than interruption. Opposing counsel often mistook her measured approach for hesitancy, a mistake that cost them credibility. She mastered the art of listening, of reading a room, of letting arrogance expose itself. Each objection, each cross-examination, each case she handled refined her ability to stay composed under pressure. The courtroom taught her strategy, patience, and the power of controlled presence, tools that would prove invaluable in the political arena. Even as she transitioned from attorney to congresswoman, Crockett remained the underdog. The rooms she entered were often built for others, for voices louder, names longer known, faces more familiar. Yet she navigated them with grace, earning respect not by demanding it, but by embodying competence and calm authority. There were moments of isolation, times when she sat alone in offices or committee rooms, waiting for an opportunity that seemed just out of reach. But each pause, each quiet hour of preparation added fuel to the fire within. Her resilience became invisible armor, one that the world rarely recognized until she chose to reveal it. On the day of the hearing, all of these lessons coalesced. Crockett's control was not passive, it was deliberate. Every gesture, every glance, every measured breath was a testament to years of preparation, to the discipline honed in courts and classrooms alike. She had learned that moments of confrontation
were not battles of volume, but of presence. When Patel raised his tone, attempting to dominate the room, she did not flinch. When he interrupted, she did not retaliate immediately. Instead, she absorbed the tension, let it flow past her, and waited for the precise moment to act. Her composure was magnetic. It drew the audience in, forced the room to recalibrate, and subtly unbalanced her opponent. Audiences watching her then and now connect to Crockett on a deeply personal level. They see themselves in her quiet strength, in the resilience of anyone who's had to navigate spaces not designed for them. Her journey validates every person who has ever been underestimated, dismissed, or talked over. Some fight with fury, some fight with volume. She fights with poise. That line encapsulates more than a strategy. It encapsulates identity, purpose, and the quiet power that comes from knowing your worth. As the hearing progresses, Crockett sits composed, a lighthouse in a room of storm-tossed rhetoric. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. Her calm itself is a statement, one that speaks louder than any interruption or accusation. The audience can feel the shift. Energy flows from the room to her, then outward, as the world leans in to witness what's coming next. Power isn't measured in decibels. It's measured in control. Each breath, each blink, every subtle gesture reinforces the narrative of resilience and mastery. This is why her opponents underestimate her, because calm is often mistaken for passivity, strategy for surrender. But Crockett has learned to turn expectation into advantage. And then as Patel interrupts mid-sentence, the room doesn't yet realize it is witnessing history. Every eye is on her, waiting. Every camera lens captures the moment. Every heartbeat holds its breath. This is the foundation. Every word Crockett will speak from here is rooted in decades of discipline. Every pause a prelude to victory. The audience feels the gravity. This is not just a hearing. It is the culmination of years of quiet fire.
The scene snaps back to the hearing room. No music, just chaos. Voices collide, gavels pound, and the tension is visible in the way aides shift uncomfortably in their seats. The storm that had been brewing all afternoon finally breaks. Kash Patel leans forward, eyes gleaming with the confidence of a man who believes the moment belongs to him. His voice cuts through the air, louder, faster, more insistent, not a question anymore, but an accusation wrapped in authority. He interrupts her again and again. Every syllable from him sounds like an attempt to drown her out, to control the narrative, to remind her and everyone watching who's supposed to hold the power in this room. The room watches in real time as confidence mutates into desperation. The camera pans across the committee, staffers exchanging glances, journalists whispering, one hand hovering over the gavel, unsure whether to intervene. Patel is no longer debating. He's performing for the cameras, mistaking volume for victory. But Jasmine Crockett remains unmoved. Her posture doesn't shift. Her face stays composed, eyes locked on him, steady, patient, unyielding. The contrast is staggering. He burns hotter with every word, and she cools the air around her without speaking. In that instant, the narrator says, low and rhythmic, it wasn't a hearing anymore. It was a pressure test, and only one of them could survive it. Patel leans in again, pushing his point past the bounds of courtesy. His tone rises, frustration showing through the polish. The crowd senses the imbalance, one side unraveling, the other waiting. Then she moves. Barely. A shift of the eyes, a measured inhale, and when she finally speaks, her voice slices through the noise like the first note after a blackout. Are you finished? 3 words. Calm. Precise. Devastating. The entire room freezes. It's not shouted, it's not defensive, it's surgical. delivered with the grace of someone who knows she's already won. Patel blinks. For the first time, his voice catches. The reporters stop typing. Even the gavel hesitates mid-air. Because everyone feels it, the balance of power just flipped. The narrator's tone sharpens. In that instant, silence became louder than shouting. Calm became the most devastating weapon of all. The camera cuts to Patel, eyes darting, trying to find footing in a moment that no longer belongs to him, then to Crockett, still, unbothered, her expression unreadable. Every second of silence after her words feels heavier than his entire speech. Because composure has weight, and right now, it's crushing him. The sound of a pin dropping echoes louder than the shouting from a minute ago. Staffers exchanging glances, some half smiling, others hiding their awe behind professionalism. Patel looks to the chair for rescue, but there's none. He starts to speak again, but the air has shifted. His words stumble. The confidence that once filled the room now feels hollow. That was the moment, the narrator intones, when dominance died in silence.
The room feels suspended. Every camera, every breath, every heartbeat, waiting for her next move. The chaos that once dominated has collapsed into silence, heavy and electric. Kash Patel leans back, eyes narrowing, realizing too late that something has shifted. He's no longer the conductor of this performance. Jasmine Crockett is. She places her hands flat on the table. No theatrics, no rush, just presence. Her gaze meets his, unflinching, measured, almost tender in its precision. When she begins, her tone is calm, deliberate, the cadence of someone who's been underestimated her entire life and learned how to turn that into power. "You've spoken a lot about facts, Mr. Patel," she says evenly. "But facts have this funny habit. They tend to survive even when talking points don't." A ripple moves through the committee. Someone stifles a cough. Patel shifts in his chair, the smirk still on his face, but the confidence behind it gone hollow. She continues, no rush, no flourish, just clarity sharp enough to cut marble. "You've painted this as a question of credibility, and yet every record, every statement, every timeline contradicts your claim. So, respectfully, are we talking about facts or about feelings?" Her phrasing lands like precision strikes, not insults, but dismantling tools. Logic layered with elegance, the kind of composure that turns argument into art. It wasn't anger that disarmed him. It was intelligence delivered like poetry under pressure. Patel opens his mouth to respond, but no words come. For the first time, he hesitates. The silence between his attempts becomes her victory. Crockett presses forward, her tone unwavering. "You see, I've spent my career in rooms like this, rooms where people talk over you, assume you'll lose your balance, but you don't fight arrogance with anger. You let it burn itself out." A few heads turn her way, not just listening, absorbing. Even the camera operator seems slower, steadier, drawn into the gravity of her control. Every calm breath was years of self-control learned in rooms that underestimated her. The narrator weaves through her speech like a current. Crockett isn't performing. She's teaching the world in real time what composure looks like when weaponized. She raises a single finger as if ticking through evidence in a courtroom. First, your timeline doesn't match the record. Second, your own prior statements contradict your point. And third, if your goal was to reveal bias, Maybe start by checking your own. Each point lands cleaner than the last. The committee chair tries to interject, but stops, sensing that this isn't the moment to interrupt. Patel's jaw tightens. His eyes flick from her face to his notes and back again, searching for something solid in a conversation that's slipping through his grasp. The narrator builds momentum. Every word she spoke was a verdict, every pause a sentencing, every glance a reminder that power isn't how loud you speak, it's how certain you sound. Cut to imagined audience reactions, flashes of screens lighting up around the world. A journalist whispers to a colleague, "She's running circles around him." A college student live tweeting types furiously, "She ate him alive," respectfully. Hashtags begin to ripple across platforms. Hashtag Crockett composure. Hashtag poised power. Hashtag respectfully destroyed. On TikTok, clips of her poised expression loop in slow motion, captioned, "This is how you end an argument without raising your voice." Back in the hearing room, Patel tries to regain footing. He leans forward, voice straining for authority. "Well, Congresswoman, if you'd—" She doesn't raise her hand or her tone. She simply looks at him, and the weight of that look is enough to stop him mid-sentence. "Mr. Patel, I understand why you're frustrated. Losing control of your own narrative can feel like chaos, but in this room, we deal in truth, not tantrums." The sound of a suppressed chuckle echoes from somewhere behind the press table. Even those who oppose her politically can't help but recognize the mastery of the moment. The narrator's tone sharpens, cinematic. She didn't defeat him with emotion. She dismantled him with evidence and grace. It wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a revelation. Crockett glances down at her notes, then back up, calm, unrushed, the kind of composure that makes everyone else feel the noise they've been making. "And since you've mentioned transparency, let me offer some. I've been interrupted 5 times during your remarks. I've responded once. And yet, it seems my restraint has spoken louder than anything said so far." The room exhales, a collective release of breath no one realized they'd been holding. Patel blinks, unsure whether to smile or respond. He tries for a grin, but it flickers, the kind of smile that says, "I'm fine," when everyone can see he's not. The narrator voice over a rising sound of hum. The smirk that began this hearing had finally collapsed, not under attack, but under truth. Crockett finishes her remarks with a calm nod to the chair. "Mr. Chairman, I yield back." Her words hang in the air longer than any speech that came before. Even the gavel feels hesitant to break the moment. Then, applause. It's not supposed to happen in a congressional hearing, but it does. Soft at first, scattered, then swelling as people realize they just witnessed something rare, dignity triumphing over arrogance in real time. Online, the ripple becomes a wave. Memes form, quotes circulate, reaction videos multiply. A YouTube clip titled "Jasmine Crockett Ends Patel Without Raising Her Voice" hits 1 million views before the hearing even adjourns. The narrator's tone shifts, awe mixed with gravity. It wasn't the force of her words that won the room. It was the restraint behind them. Because power isn't about shouting the truth. It's about standing so firm that the truth speaks through you. The camera lingers on her face one last time, serene, unbothered, glowing in the aftermath of her own quiet storm. Patel looks down at his papers, pretending to read, but his hands betray him, restless, defeated. The narrator concludes, by the time she finished, the question wasn't whether Patel had lost, it was how far her words would echo. The gavel strikes once more. Fade out, to the sound of distant applause, the hum of phones lighting up,
and a single trending phrase across every corner of the internet. Respectfully, she won.
It started with a clip, 34 seconds of silence, composure, and precision. By nightfall, it had become a national event. Hashtag #CalmCrockett was trending across every platform before the hearing had even adjourned. On TikTok, her "Are you finished?" moment looped over lo-fi beats and cinematic filters. On Twitter, journalists posted reaction threads like dispatches from the front lines of a cultural shift. CNN called it the most composed takedown in congressional history. MSNBC's headline read, "When calm becomes power, Jasmine Crockett redefines political presence." Even conservative commentators grudgingly admitted you can't coach that kind of control. The narrator's tone hums beneath the montage. In a world addicted to outrage, calm became the new rebellion. The viral video reached millions in hours. The replay slowed down the moment Patel's smirk faltered, freeze-framed and captioned, the instant he realized he'd lost the room. Reaction videos flooded the algorithm. One teacher in Atlanta filmed herself watching it on her lunch break, whispering, "This is how I want to handle my classroom. Quiet power." A veteran in Texas wrote, "This woman just reminded America what discipline looks like." And a teenage girl in Chicago stitched the clip with her own caption, "Note to self, you don't have to yell to win." It wasn't just a viral moment. It was a collective sigh of relief. For months, politics had been a shouting match, a theater of outrage. But this was different. Crockett had done what no trending topic could. She restored faith in composure. The narrator continues, "The internet had seen fury. It had seen scandal, but what it hadn't seen was dignity trending." Morning shows dissected every beat of her tone, her pacing, her gaze. Analysts spoke in reverent tones, using words like grace, discipline, and masterclass. Psychologists appeared on panels to discuss emotional regulation in leadership. One segment on PBS simply titled their coverage, "Stillness as Strength." Meanwhile, the comments section was alive with poetry. @Ray from Detroit wrote, "She didn't clap back, she counseled the nation." @PolicyNerd90 wrote, "Some people perform, others educate." The Real Keisha J wrote, "We needed this, a reminder that calm isn't weakness, it's power refined." Even Patel's allies couldn't stop the avalanche. By the end of the week, his name was trending beneath hers, not as a victor, but as a cautionary tale. Late-night comedians replayed the clip with split-screen commentary. On one side, Patel's flustered gestures, on the other, Crockett's serene stare. The contrast said everything. In that moment, America wasn't laughing at her restraint. It was learning from it, the intones the narrator. The camera montage continues. Newsrooms buzzing, anchors shaking their heads in admiration, the clip playing on screens in coffee shops, airports, and classrooms. Each replay added to the mythology, the day a congresswoman turned composure into a cultural phenomenon. On Reddit, users debated whether the clip would be taught in media courses. On YouTube, channels titled it The Jasmine Crockett Doctrine, How to Win Without Noise. A popular motivational page posted, "She didn't fight fire with fire, she built a firewall." It became a shared language, a shorthand for emotional intelligence in a time of chaos. People began using Crockett composure to describe staying calm in meetings or handling conflict. Memes showed images of Crockett with captions like, "Unbothered is undefeated." The narrator's voice softens, reflective. It wasn't just political theater anymore. It was therapy for a nation tired of shouting at itself. Commentators began framing her response as a watershed, the kind of moment that transcends politics and lands in culture's bloodstream. A New York Times op-ed titled "The Power of the Pause" went viral on its own, arguing that Crockett's silence had done more for civility than any speech in years. On The View, one host leaned forward and said, It's not about her winning the argument. It's about reminding us that dignity still matters. The applause in that studio matched the one that had erupted in the hearing room days before. Spontaneous, sincere, almost grateful. Because something about that moment hit deeper than policy or partisanship. It reminded people, especially women, especially those told to stay in their lane, that composure can be the loudest statement of all. Every generation, the narrator says, has its viral spark, but every so often, one goes beyond content and becomes character. By the end of the week, Crockett's clip had crossed 40 million views. Patel, once the self-assured tactician, had gone silent. And America, for once, wasn't arguing about the noise. It was celebrating the quiet. Cut to final image, a slow pan across TV screens playing the same clip in different cities, Los Angeles, New York, Houston, and Chicago. People pause mid-scroll, mid-sentence, mid-cynicism, watching not because they have to, but because they want to feel something steady again. For one brief, extraordinary moment, the country looked up from its anger and saw itself reflected in calm. The screen fades to black. But behind the applause, one question remained. What does this mean for the future of our political tone?
When the dust finally settled and the headlines began to fade into the scroll of everyday politics, one truth remained. What Jasmine Crockett did that day wasn't just a viral moment. It was a mirror, a reflection of what America could still be when dignity outlasts noise. The narrator's tone softens, introspective yet resolute. This wasn't just about one exchange. It was about what America chooses to value, noise or dignity. In a culture obsessed with confrontation, Crockett's calm wasn't weakness, it was rebellion. A quiet revolution against the expectation that to be heard, one must first be loud. Her poise had turned a hearing into a parable, one about grace under fire, about restraint as resistance. Because real leadership isn't about who dominates the room, it's about who steadies it. The scene drifts between moments of reflection, a janitor in a DC hallway watching the replay on his phone, whispering, "That's how you handle them." A high school debate team dissecting her tone, studying her pauses like scripture. A mother telling her daughter, "That's how strength sounds." In every reaction, a common thread, composure as courage. The narrator continues, voice warm with conviction. In a time when chaos sells and outrage trends, composure has become the most radical act of all. Crockett's power wasn't in overpowering her opponent, it was in mastering herself. She showed that calm isn't the absence of emotion, it's the discipline of purpose. Every pause, every glance, every steady word became a declaration that respect is not weakness, and grace is not surrender. It's what true representation looks like, not just speaking for others, but showing others how to hold their ground. Because every woman who's ever been talked over in a meeting, every young person told to stay in their place, every immigrant told they don't belong, saw something of themselves in that hearing room. They saw what it looks like to win without noise. Real power doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand tall and speak truth, once. And when truth is spoken with poise, it echoes louder than any headline ever could. Her composure wasn't strategy, it was legacy. It reminded a divided country that character doesn't need amplification, it needs consistency. That control of the moment begins with control of oneself. Cut to imagined reflections, political analysts quoting her line in interviews, educators citing it in leadership seminars, young women using it as captions beneath their graduation photos. Power in Poise trends for days, not as outrage, but as aspiration. Even Patel's silence in the aftermath becomes part of the lesson. His overconfidence faded quickly, her calm endured. Because sound bites fade, but self-control lingers. The narrator's voice slows, deepens, almost reverent now. When tempers flare, composure is courage. When noise consumes truth, silence becomes strength. When chaos feels inevitable, steadiness is the rebellion. This wasn't never about left or right. It was about a universal hunger for dignity, about the rediscovery of something America forgot it admired, grace. The final sequence replays the moment. Crockett's steady eyes, Patel's faltering smirk, the soft echo of her words. Are you finished? But now, it's not confrontation we see, it's clarity. Because in that moment, she didn't just win an argument, she reminded us who we could be when we stop performing and start listening. The music swells, strings rising softly, steady as her tone had been. A pause. Then the narrator's final reflection, delivered like a benediction. There will always be those who mistake volume for strength, but history remembers the ones who stayed calm, stood tall, and spoke truth, not to dominate, but to dignify. Fade to black. On her image, poised, unbothered, luminous in stillness. And if that moment moved you, wait until you hear what came after.